Welcome to episode 142 of MMO Weekly, presented as always by Chitty's Cheesesteaks. I'm your host, Sal Manzo, joined by John Luke Chaparro, Matthias Altwick Kirasaki. Guys, the Mets are 10 games under 500, 9 games under 500 perhaps, because they won yesterday. They're not good. The Mets is still bad. It seems like the highlight of the year will be taking 2 out of 3 from the Yankees at Citi Field. After that series, things were feeling pretty good. Then the Mets would get swept by the Marlins in Miami, lose 2 out of 3 to the Reds here. And now they welcome the Marlins back to Citi Field. So that's awesome. I'm sure they're very happy to see them. But the theme seems to be here. Juan Soto is good. Everybody else is not. The bullpen's been pretty good so far. We know Devin Williams, we talked about it before. He gave up a grand slam the other day, but other than that, he's been good overall. Craig Kimbrell's on another team. Thanks a lot. Appreciate that. Get out of here. Luis Robert on the 60-day IL, so thank you for a good week of baseball from you. We'll always remember 88 fondly. Lindor's doing baseball stuff. He's walking around in a boot. Mets. Just not very good. I don't know how else to put it. I thought maybe A.J. Ewing could maybe give a little life into this team, and he has. Not that he hasn't. Some of these young guys, Ben just played better with the two of them coming together, but just not good overall. The offense continues to really struggle. Bo Bichette, don't know what you really have there. You just have a really expensive, I don't know what he is player, so that's awesome. Juan Soto's hitting homers. He seems to do that when games are a little out of reach or whatever else. But he's swinging the bat well. He's the only person that is. And the Mets are where they are. Not good. So, Matthias, we'll start off with you here. We'll just talk about recapping the last couple series and where things stand here with the highest payroll in baseball. That's 10 games under 500.
Yeah, I mean, they're 13-12 this month, but that's not nearly good enough, especially when you consider they started the month 11-5. You would hope you go from 11-5 to something better than 13-12. You look at how this month has gone, you got that sweep of the Tigers, great. 2 out of 3 from the Yankees, that dramatic comeback in the series finale, great. Splitting with the Nationals, not great, but you can sort of live with it. Getting swept by the Marlins is absolutely not acceptable at all. And that was, I think, the worst series of the year, which is crazy. They've had a lot of bad series this year, but to lose in the fashion that they did, scoring 2 runs in only 3 games, giving up a walk-off grand slam in the series finale. In a game, by the way, you got shut out again. That was just, it felt like rock bottom. And I've said that a lot this year, and that's not a good thing. The Red Series, you knew that you were going to see good pitching. And that's what makes Nolan McLean's struggles all the more, concerning, I guess. He had 2 bad outings when the team could least afford it. That last outing in particular was kind of weird. He had 13 swings and misses, but it felt like every time they made contact, they hit it kind of far. I feel like, people are almost putting too much stock into it, but it's still concerning. He's had 2 of his worst starts in a row. His stuff looks like it's just lagged a little bit. That's a little concerning. The bullpen, it's 8th in the majors in the ERA. All right. I can't complain much about it. Basically all of their main guys have done well, and they just got AJ Minter back. Great. But the offense, man, where do I even begin with the offense? The guy's not named Juan Soto. Look, Carson Bench, he busted out of that 1-for-20 slump very nicely against the Reds in the series finale. 2 big RBI hits. A.J. Ewing, while his strikeouts are high, he's still getting on base, making things happen, playing solid defense in center field. But they've scored 2 or fewer runs 25 times already this year. And here's something shocking. They're 1-24 in those games. It's just not a way to win baseball games. And it feels like there's also like a new injury every week. All right. It was already bad enough, losing Lindor, losing Soto earlier in the season. Look, Soto, and Lindor, and Bichette have barely played together this year. We've yet to see this team really at full strength. But, I mean, Alvarez and Holmes getting hurt the same week. Even Tyrone Taylor is hurt. You basically have an entire starting lineup that's on the injured list. I mean, Ronnie Mauricio is injured too. You're basically, at this point, they've been asking the pitchers to be perfect. And when they're not perfect, they end up losing games. So, yeah, it's just been kind of frustrating. You saw them sort of get out of the mud for a couple weeks, and now they're kind of back to where they were. So this upcoming series against the Marlins is basically, if you don't sweep them, you're back to mediocrity. So yeah, not the best stretch for these guys.
Yeah, this team is always the biggest tease in the world because they always seem to, it's kind of like that line from Godfather 3. Just when I thought I was out, they pull me back in. And then when they do pull you back in, they kind of hit you with the hardest gut punch in the world. Arguably, some of the weirdest things have gone on this season, even just over the last 2 weeks. Like you guys said, you thought that there was this momentum coming in from sweeping the Tigers. Everything was beginning to go on point. Everything looked a little bit, cleaner. It looked better. They looked like a team. They were fighting. They were in every single game. And then obviously, even though they lost game one, beating the Yankees 2 out of 3 in the way that they did for those final 2 games really kind of put forth this sort of optimism that was starting to build up. And they just completely destroyed all of that goodwill within a week and a half, which is insane. I cannot for the life of me understand how inept this offense is outside of Juan Soto. I've never seen a group of players be so aggressive at the wrong time and yet not be aggressive when they need it at the same time. I can't count how many times I've watched Bo Bichette or even Soto, Carson Bench, AJ Ewing, even just everybody looking at pitches down the middle, Mark Vientos especially, where they look at pitches right down the middle and then are prone to chasing pitches 10 feet out of the strike zone. It's infuriating. Even just the other night when they won against the Reds in the series finale, Mark Vientos came up, I want to say twice, with runners on base, even runners with scoring position, and I think he popped out and grounded out both times. So what is exactly their approach at the plate? Bo Bichette is the one that kind of confuses me the most because out of everyone on this team outside of Soto, he is actually supposed to be the best pure hitter on this team in terms of getting on base, going the other way with it, driving in runs with runners in scoring position. That's what was promised, and he just doesn't seem to do that. He's getting hits. Yeah, great. He had a 3-hit performance the other day, but what does it matter if you're not scoring runs? And then you mentioned the injuries. You know, I mean, this kind of echoes very similar to 2009, where that was a roster that was full of superstar power. Beltran, Delgado, Reyes. You name it. Santana, Oliver Perez, all of these guys coming off of that really strong 2008 season, even though they faltered down the stretch. But everybody got hurt. Delgado's career ended after a handful of games that year because of his hip impingement. Everything fell apart that year, and I'm getting a very similar sort of feel to that from that team to this team because Polanco, even though he is playing rehab games, he's hurt. Sal, you mentioned Luis Robert with the 1 week he was here. Okay, good, sayonara. And it just kind of seems like it's injury after injury, and I don't know what it is. This is a very weird team, and I understood what the vision was trying to build the team that Stearns was attempting to put together, but it just seems like everything just went wrong. 2022 was the year everything went right to a degree up until the end. Even 2024, same thing. Everything went right. Probably about as lucky of a team I've seen all season in 2024 when they avoided major injuries. 25 and 25 and 26. Well, kind of have crap luck on that front. I don't know. I honestly do not know what to make of this team. And they're going to play the Marlins this weekend. And I don't know what it is about the Marlins, even going back to 2007, where they just are always a thorn on this team's side. And they play like it's game 7 of the World Series every single time. And their fans are really beginning to lean into that as well. And it's actually kind of embarrassing because truth be told, you compare New York to Miami. New York is supposed to be a way bigger, way better, more operationally run, better franchise than the Marlins. And maybe in some aspects they are, but not on the field, not this season. When you're getting spanked by guys and look, no offense to him, but when you're getting game-winning grand slams from Heriberto Hernandez, come on. no offense to Hernandez, he's a major league ball player, but I feel like at this point, my 12-year-old nephew can hit a grand slam off of anyone on this team at this point. It's incredibly frustrating.
And I mean, to your point, Dontrelle Willis even admitted last year when the Mets are in town, the Marlins treat it like it's their World Series. And honestly, it's pretty evident. We saw it at the end of last year. Remember what Connor Norby said? They're out there to try to end the Mets season. And they did. The Mets let them do that. And then this weekend, it's like the Mets have a chance to, go back to New York feeling good. Nope, get swept. And to your point about the injuries, I think the Clay Holmes one, honestly, I know Carlos Mendoza said this, but it feels like that one hurt the most. Besides Lindor, I'd say that. Because obviously the Lindor injury hurts because it happened the day Soto came back. You finally get your two superstars in the lineup together and one gets hurt again. But the Holmes injury, he was having the best season of his career. We're probably looking at a guy who would have made the All-Star game as a starter. He's already made it twice as a reliever. And now he has a, fractured fibula. I know he says he doesn't need surgery, but we're still looking at a guy who's out until, the middle of August. And, say they continue to sputter and they end up selling at the trade deadline, you're probably getting a lesser return if you move them. So that one I was just stunned when I heard the news because he stayed in and faced 7 batters after the incident. And it's just, it felt like every time this team gets like a shred of momentum, they get hit with something else. It's just, I don't know. It's 2009. I remember they at least gave us hope until I'd say late June. They had like a big month in May. I remember they went 19-9 in May. They had the Omir Santos home run in Boston. But this year it's like the injuries started early and they haven't stopped. And like the rest of the shenanigans just have not stopped. And I mean, maybe this is, I don't even know if I can compare it to 2009 fairly.
No, the comp seems to be, and I was only 3 years old, thankfully. Everyone who's old enough keeps telling me this is 1994 all over again. For those who are old enough, the best team, the worst team money can buy, that whole thing. That's the comps that I keep hearing about this team, which is not a comp that you ever want because they were really bad. So not great at all. You talk about guys like Polanco, some of these injuries. Feels like you're going to get these guys back just basically to showcase to trade them. Whenever Polanco comes back, outside of Lindor, I don't think that's going to happen. But just, these guys are on these short-term contracts. Freddie Peralta is not hurt, but, these guys' days are numbered here in Queens. If you thought Scherzer and Verlander were out of here fast, after a couple of months and only, a season with the team, this is going to be even more. I don't know what this team's going to look like by the middle of August. But hopefully every prospect and every just warm body that the Mets have in the farm system is ready to play because that's what it's looking like here. And, if you're Juan Soto, I guess at this point you're just chasing, you're chasing individual statistics, right? Individual greatness at this point. But, if the Mets are really out of it, like I said, really deep by middle of August, you have like, do you keep playing? Do you go, oh, that calf is hurting again? I think I'm going to collect those paychecks here sitting and we'll try again next year. You know what I mean? That's just where it feels like we're at. It's going to be cheap tickets. You don't mind if you want to take the train and don't want to drive, you're going to get cheap tickets. You're going to see, the Syracuse Mets playing in Flushing and go on, $5 Tuesdays. So you can get a hot dog and a beer and only have to spend a few bucks. That's what I would do. Because this is just, it's not even that it's just not fun. The All-Star game doesn't matter. Everything just doesn't matter as much at this point. The Mets are an afterthought. Obviously, you have everything going on with the Knicks, which is awesome. But for a team that has the highest payroll in the sport that it plays in is irrelevant now, and it's not even June. It's colossal failure on a lot of ends. A lot of ends. I do think that they probably should have pulled the ripcord on Mendoza about a month ago. It seemed to work for the Phillies, kind of new blood. The Mets chose not to do that. That may be now a Cohen thing. They don't want to make this move in the middle of the season or whatever, but they continue to play uninspired baseball. I mean, think about just the other day, David Peterson not backing up a ball at home on a base hit. Just little things, right? That good teams don't do. Good coaches don't allow to happen again. Ronnie made that point too. Gary kind of said, do you think, Mendoza or the coaching staff will address it after the game? And he said, even if they do, I don't think it's going to matter because they wouldn't keep doing it if they address things like this. So this is just a team that continues to just flounder, 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 flounder. They can't fight their way to a paper bag, and it's just going to be another irrelevant summer. And it's just a shame that it had to happen so early in the season.
Yeah, I mean, it's the thing is, you know, we talk about the offense and how poorly they've been playing, and the reality is, at any time that the pitching staff puts them in a hole, it feels like the game is over, even if it's just like 1-0, 2-0. Like when Peterson allowed 2 runs in the first inning on Tuesday night, it was like, all right, the game is over because the offense just doesn't really put up a fight. That was the thing about that one, I guess we'll call it a week-long stretch. Or actually, no, let's I'll give them credit. The Angels series. They came back from a couple deficits in the Angels series, but they actually showed fight in those games. It feels like when they're losing, it's like as soon as the opponent scores, it's over. And it really started in that Miami series when, they went up 1-0 on the Soto home run. And then as soon as the Marlins took the lead, it was like just up, down, up, down, up, down. They were like 1 over the minimum that game, or 2 over the minimum that game, if I'm not mistaken. That's the thing is they're wasting quality pitching. Like, if, you'll have a couple of outings like McClain has had or like Peralta had against Miami where, the guys struggle. And that happens. But they're wasting outings where these guys are actually going out there, giving you quality starts, allowing 3 runs or fewer, pitching deep enough into games. And then the offense just doesn't support them at all. And I'll give one gripe with the starting pitching, though, is that they got to stop with this piggyback experiment. If you're going to piggyback guys, it should not be 2 soft tossing lefties. David Peterson's been way better as a reliever. He's a 2.2 ERA as a reliever. Just keep him there. Let Jonah Tong, if he's going to be in the majors, just let him be a starting pitcher. He's not going to experience growing pains if he's just going to be coming out of the bullpen. He has to learn while he's young. So I think, at this point, just make him a starting pitcher. What's the worst that can happen? So, I really just, I'm at a loss for words when it comes to this offense, really, because, 90% of their losses, it's because the lineup just isn't hitting. It's just a real shame that, they're finally getting good starting pitching, getting good, relievers. Like I said, they're top 10 bullpen in the majors, and it's just all going to waste. And by the middle of the, I don't even know, it might start earlier. By the end of July, I don't even know what this roster is going to look like. And I don't even know, which prospects are even going to come up.
Yeah, I agree with you on that point with the offense just really not doing their thing. It's like I mentioned before, it's incredibly frustrating watching these at bats sort of being thrown away, And then on a counterpoint, you look at the other teams when they take at bats against the Mets starting pitching, and it sort of kind of echoes what you want or what we want as fans to see them do. And it's funny because they were doing exactly that. They were during that 2-week stretch where they were winning, the Angels series, part of the Rockies series in Colorado, and then going forward against Detroit and even against the Yankees, is that they were actually going up there challenging the starting pitching. They were getting on base, they were stealing, they were putting pressure on other teams, and then they head to DC, and then a switch flips to Miami, and then they just stop. So it kind of has to make you think about what exactly is going on in that locker room. What is the disconnect between the players and the coaches? Because ultimately, at the end of the day, these guys are getting paid millions of dollars to play a game. So you would hope that they themselves would be motivated to do their best every single day. And for the most part, they tend to do that because they are professionals at their jobs. But it's like you mentioned, Sal, it's the little things that they're getting wrong that really tend to make a difference and have really begun to sort of seep in. And I feel like a lot of that really began to start, that kind of came through last year. Around June 13th or so. And that's when everything really started to fall apart, so to speak, where it just didn't seem like nothing was really resonating with the players. And you can kind of see it this year just by looking at their body language when something goes wrong, looking at the way they react to things on the field. They just look so dejected. And even when you're in person, I notice in my seats up in 405, I'm right behind the Mets dugout. And I distinctly remember a difference of how the team was in 2024, where they were moving around. Everybody was, sort of like, up and at them, and they were eager. I was there in Memorial Day for when McLean got shelled, and it just looked dead. And that kills me because it's not that these guys don't want to play. They all want to be there, of course. It's not a question of that. It just sort of seems like there seems to be a disconnect between whether it's Mendoza himself or the coaching staff as a whole. I can't really harp on the coaching staff too much, the new coaching staff, because they basically gutted it through with the exception of a couple of people. So it probably has to be some sort of influence that Mendoza is exerting that doesn't seem to be resonating. And that's kind of been the theme with this team for the last 10 years or so, outside of Terry Collins. They just seem to be very transitional in the manager spot, and they can't seem to find the guy who can really and consistently grab the attention of the players season in and season out, that can really get them going. I mean, you had it in Buck Showalter in 22. You had it in Mendoza in 24, but it just kind of seems like every other instance before that, it just always seems to be a miss with that. And it gets to a point where you say, why does this happen to us all the time? And just coming back to this season, they just look dead. And you see Mendoza in the dugout looking like he's trying to manage his way out of a job. He looks miserable. He does not look like he has that same intensity that he had in 24, which made him, probably one of the darlings of the club. I don't know. Is it because Lindor is a presence or Soto is a presence? I don't know. But you can clearly tell that something is wrong. I don't know. It's really frustrating because, us as, regular folk who are not professional athletes, we kind of want to see them put their all out there, and they're just moping around. Like what are we doing here?
Yeah, and the reality is now I don't think they're going to pull the plug on Mendoza in the middle of the season. They had their opportunity. I think their best opportunity was probably at the end of last season. Because now once the season starts, you have a guy who's on an expiring contract. You're not going to fire a guy who has 3 months left on his contract. They gave him a vote of confidence, and I'll give the team credit. They actually played better for a little bit after they gave him a vote of confidence. And, that's the other thing, is that it probably doesn't feel good as a player to play for a guy who you keep hearing rumors that he's going to get fired. It probably does take a lot out of you. I don't know what I'm not in the clubhouse. I'm not in the dugout. I don't know what the relationship is like between the players and Mendoza, but something has to give here, because I've been to a couple games this year. That's the thing. I've only been to 2 games this year. But the second game I went to was one of the day game of that Rockies doubleheader. And I had not seen Citi Field look more like a ghost town than I did that day. And it's not that people weren't there. People were there. The stadium was just dead. And I fear for what the attendance is going to look like this summer. If they do end up selling off, Citi Field's going to be a complete ghost town. So yeah, I don't know if there is an immediate solution. I don't know if firing Carlos Mendoza would actually do anything at this point. But I don't see it happening. If they did, great. Give Kai Correa a shot. Give Carlos Beltran a shot. But they've cycled through every other coach on that staff, other than a couple guys. One guy has remained, and clearly he's not the answer.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good point you're making there. I mean, I do think part of the reason why Mendoza wasn't let go, continuity's sake, I don't think Cohen maybe likes that. And you brought up Carlos Beltran. You brought up the fact that Mendoza has an expiring contract in the end of the year. I think they're just going to let this run its course. And I personally think Carlos Beltran will be managing the Mets whenever they play baseball again. May not be next year. That's a whole nother thing.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah, we're not even getting into that today. We even know that there were talks, first collective bargaining kind of happened, but that's all another thing between those two sides. But yeah, man, it's now keep going back to kind of the crash out, if you want to call it that, that Eric Chavez had online a few months ago with everything going on, with the points he was kind of making, more so pointed at David Stearns and I think in roster construction. But I keep kind of going to that when thinking about how this is a rudderless ship. And I think about Adam Ottavino's comments about Mendoza from a couple of years ago. It just feels like, everything was hot in 24. Lindor was hot. The pitching staff was hot. And Mendoza was hot too. It felt like every kind of call he made worked. And it feels like he's never caught any of that magic again since. It feels like every kind of move he makes doesn't really work for the most part. Moves that, would have worked a couple of years ago just don't seem to not be happening. So, I think we're all at a big loss every time we kind of hop on here. There's not much to say when, again, the team has the highest payroll in the sport, the highest paid player in the sport, and you are in last place. And you have – do they still have the worst record in the National League?
I believe the Giants are below them.
Great.
Yeah, Mets
Somebody else. That's awesome.
Yeah, exactly.
Great. Lovely. Well, the second
Oh,
most.
and
They
the
didn't do well
Rockies.
in that either.
Oh, we forgot about the Rockies. There you go. These are not names you want to be with when you have the highest payroll in the sport. But this is where they're at. It's going to be a very different team in a couple months, whether folks like it or not. It's just going to be what it is. And whatever prospects they do have or anybody they think is a prospect or could be a prospect, come on down to Flushing because you're playing. That's what it's going to feel like. Matthias, you may get an at-bat. Who knows? Who knows?
All right, I'll loosen up. I mean,
sign me up.
You can't be
Let's
any
do
worse
it.
than the other 8 guys in the lineup right now.
I'll find a local batting. All right.
Yeah, listen, have your helmet fall off. You'll be like Cologne. At least be entertaining. These other at-bats are horrible.
All right.
But that's where we're at, guys. I guess we'll end the show there. Matthias is going to get ready. Just bad times, It's just a colossal failure. The more we talk, the last time we had a podcast, I kept saying, get to 500, and we'll talk. At this point, I don't think that's going to happen. And if it does, it may happen in like August 20th when some of these young guys come up and they just play a little better because they don't know any better. So I think we're throwing that out the window. And that'll end the show this week. We'll see what happens when the Marlins come into town. Hopefully the Mets just pretend they're not playing the Marlins. Pretend you're playing some other team within them, the Mariners perhaps. Any team but the Marlins, I think the Mets should think about. So hopefully they do better than they did last weekend. And as always, everybody, let's go Mets, even though it's getting harder every time I say it.